Hey guys, so I am back and I am waiting on Rudy from Rio, Brazil. Rudy was going to be my guest and we were going to catch up, chat a little bit, and he was supposed to be on at 7 and that's 9 o'clock his time, but I'm not seeing any signs of Rudy, so I don't know if we got our wires crossed or I don't know if he's having technical difficulties. He's used to using one type of software for video calls, and I'm used to using another. I like Zoom, and I think he likes Skype. So it might be that he's having to update, whenever you start using a new software, you got to update stuff and you got to do this and do that. So I'm not sure. I'm going to keep my eyeballs on my screen over here, though. So if I'm looking over there, I'm trying to see if he's trying to join. But I thought that since we're set up, we got the video running and the lights and the microphone and everything seems to be working. Yep. Then we might as well make a video. And so Rudy, as some of you who follow my YouTube channel will probably know, he lived in Muscle House by the sea. And, he might be one of the few, I don't know if he's the last, but he's probably in a very small circle of people who actually lived in Muscle House by the Sea. And Muscle House by the Sea was run by Joy Cretis. And if you're new to my YouTube channel, there are a few videos about Muscle House by the Sea, and you can watch them on my YouTube channel. But in this issue of Muscle Power, there's an article about Muscle House by the Sea. And I'll turn this around here for you. Some of these pictures might have been in the video that I made on my YouTube channel. So there's Joy sitting right there at her typewriter. And Joy was an older woman. I don't know how old she was right there. 50s, 60s, somewhere in there. And she ran the house. She owned the house and she wanted people to rent some rooms in her house. It wasn't a huge house, but there were some spare rooms. And she would charge, I think it was just like, pennies. I want to say $2 a week, but that doesn't sound like it wasn't enough, but somewhere in there. Steve Reeves, of course, stayed in Muscle House by the Sea along with George Eiferman. In fact, I believe Steve and George were the first two bodybuilders, which led then to all the other bodybuilders. So once the magazines found out that Muscle House by the Sea existed, then a lot of bodybuilders ended up living in Muscle House by the Sea. And Rudy, who was supposed to join us tonight, was one of them. Malcolm Brenner, Jerry Ross, Tom Murphy, Bob Rome, Ken Smith, Bud Pryor, and Rudy knew Bud Pryor and told me Bud was like the sheriff of the house. He was Joy's protector, and if people got out of line, then Bud was the one that would go take care of it. Joy was a very religious woman. She enjoyed getting up early in the morning, and she would go just a block across the street and would go swim in the ocean. She was very physically fit. She was a very healthy lady. She was very religious, and she insisted that anybody that lived there in Muscle House by the Sea ate healthy. There was a refrigerator, and on my YouTube channel, there's a picture that Rudy sent to me. It might be the first time that picture's ever been seen publicly of Zabo, I always say Zabo, but it's Zabo, with Joy. And it was a posed picture, I guess, for the magazines. And Joy signed it to Rudy. And so, if you like your physical culture, that is incredible. A picture of Joy with Zabo inside Muscle House. And in the picture, the refrigerator is right behind Zabo and Joy and there's a quart of milk that Joy is handing to Zabo. At the bottom here are some more bodybuilders. I'm not sure how well you can see that. I'm not using my normal camera. I'm just using the integrated webcam on this laptop. But Bud Pryor is one of these guys down here. So Rudy was going to join us tonight, and he was going to talk about his time in Muscle House by the Sea. And I find that fascinating. And if you're new to physical culture and, you know, the bodybuilders from the 50s and the 60s, then this is quite a chunk of history, Muscle House by the Sea. Eventually, Joy sold Muscle House. I'm just fast forwarding. And from what Rudy told me, as she got older, Joy, was having a hard time, I guess, operating in the world, walking and things like that. And from what I remember, she was hit by a car and she never recovered from that. So anyway, Rudy was supposed to be our guest, but I have some other things we can talk about in the meantime, and we will get Rudy back here at some point. I wanted to talk about, hey, it's Rudy.
I'm a couple of minutes late, sorry. I was in the other apartment, so if you want to call me, it's okay with me. I'm ready to take your call. I'll keep waiting for you, okay?
All right, so that came in about 7 minutes ago. Wow, we got all kind of drama going on here. You never know what might happen. All right, I don't know if you heard that, but Rudy said he was at his other apartment. So anyway, so that's Joy and Muscle House by the Sea. And Rudy, once again, he lived in that house. So I know he met George Eiferman. George did not live in the house at the time, but he met George on the beach. Rudy met Jack LaLanne. Rudy he went to the Weider office, and Joe wasn't there when Rudy was on his road trip from Florida to New York and then to New Jersey. He stopped in New Jersey and he stopped at the Weider offices, but he didn't meet Joe because he was out. He met John Grimmick. He went to York, Pennsylvania. So here's a guy who's got so many stories. He was actually a bodybuilder. He owned a gym, and the list just goes on and on. He's a friend of Sandra, Steve's first wife. And so we'll get him on. We just have tech issues, and we'll overcome that. That's all right. Once again, he's in Brazil, and I'm in Texas. Behind me right here, we have some history. Let me shine this light. It's not that great in here. My little museum that I'm expanding little by little. We have the wall. So right here is the wall that was Steve Reeves' original workout log. And when Steve was 15, 16 years old, he started working out in his garage gym in Oakland. He had learned about the weights from a neighbor named Joe, and Joe had beaten Steve in an arm wrestling match, and Steve was bigger than Joe, and so Steve could not figure out how that happened. And so he would write his workout, Steve, on his garage wall in white crayon. And, you probably are aware of this already if you're a Steve Reeves fan, but that's the actual piece of wall from his garage in Oakland. And in this issue, and I think there's 2 different issues of Flex where they cover this story. George Helmer's the one that discovered the wall, and without George, this would not exist. So hats off. George put a lot of work into that. And there's George right here with Steve. And then there's some pictures of Steve when he was a teenager. And it's pretty mind-blowing. Unearthing a Legend's Original Workout Routine by John Little. Here is the house right here in Oakland. And then here's the backyard, some of Steve's posing pictures they think they were done in Steve's backyard here, where there's like a white bed sheet or something hung up on a clothesline. The garage was down this way here, and so that's a little piece of the Oakland garage. Here's not a great picture. It's very dark, but that's inside the garage right here where the homeowners were so gracious to let Steve, and here are the homeowners right here. Right there. Once they died, the house went into foreclosure. Gloria and Ray Hartman. And so I hear that the house is still there. You can do a little detective work and figure out the address, Steve Reeves' childhood home. But that story is fascinating. And once again, this is the holy grail, as it's been called, of bodybuilding, the greatest bodybuilder ever. That's his workout log. I got one other thing I want to cover. I'm just checking to see about Rudy. I hate to leave him hanging. He's never used Zoom before, so I understand. It can be a little tricky. All right, so I want to talk about one other thing. There is well, first of all, thanks to Eric Moore for suggesting this book right here. It's called Wolves of Croton, The Untold Story of Milo. I don't know how well you can see that. I'm reading it on my Kindle. It's by John Abdo, A-B-D-O. So thank you for that. It's really fascinating. It's about mythology, and I love that kind of stuff. It's really, really interesting. So this book right here, I learned about doing a little detective work. It's called The Essence of Being by Dominic Juliano. Once again, not a great picture. The Essence of Being. Well, who is Dominic Juliano? Well, he was Artie Zeller's training partner. Artie Zeller was a very famous, he was a bodybuilder, and he was a photographer. He shot a lot of photos for Joe Weider and some others. He met Dominic Juliano at the Eastside Barbell Club in New York. And then Artie and Dominic met Marvin Eder. And Rudy had just emailed me about Marvin Eder bench pressing over 500 pounds, which, incredible. I think Bill Pearl was one of the first. So Dominic Juliano and Artie Zeller, and I don't know that Marvin Eder ever ended up out in California to live. Leroy Colbert was also there. And Dominic met Joe Weider at this Eastside Barbell Club. I had never heard of Eastside Barbell Club. I'd heard of Westside Barbell Club, but that's a totally different side of the United States. So then Dominic met Steve Reeves 2 different times, but he met him at Muscle Beach. And so this book talks about arriving in Santa Monica, 1948. Steve Reeves told Dominic about doing pullovers with a dumbbell for the chest to expand the rib cage. And so this is another fascinating book. They mentioned Vince Gironda, Armand Tanny, Jack LaLanne. He actually Dominic worked out with Jack LaLanne. That's covered in this book. Roy Hilligan, and on and on and on. George Eiferman. So anyway, I wanted to know if talks about the dungeon at 4th and Santa Monica Boulevard. So I think this is kind of a sleeper book. I'm guessing some of the old timers haven't even heard of this book. The Essence of Being by Dominic Juliano. And it's not just about bodybuilding. It's also about Dominic's travels, where later on he gets out of bodybuilding, he gets into dancing, and he gets on a boat and he travels around, and it's really, really interesting. All right, well, I'm going to leave it at that, guys. So we will get Rudy another time, and I'm glad that we had some stuff to talk about. What did you guys think of the Olympia? It was just this past weekend, and somebody sent me a picture of what the trophy looks like now. And there you go. That is what they hand out now to the current Mr. Olympia. I'm just kidding. The current Mr. Olympia doesn't look bad. It's obviously not the physical culture we know and love, but that's what bodybuilding is now. And, you know, I have a few more minutes here. I was thinking about this. When I got into bodybuilding in 1985, I was 21 years old and I walked into a Gold's Gym because I had panic attacks and I was looking for something to help me become healthier. So I switched my diet up. I was at college at Baylor University in Waco. I joined Gold's Gym, started working out immediately. I felt great. Never had another panic attack. Never had any sort of issues other than, a cold here and there. But at that point, I wanted to be a pro bodybuilder because I love bodybuilding so much. And I bet a lot of you guys that are watching this felt the same way. Maybe you didn't want to be a pro, but maybe you wanted to be a state level bodybuilder. And so I was in bodybuilding from 1985 till 2001 and competed numerous times. And your hopes were to get into the magazines. My training partner, Mike Scarcella, he was on the cover of Muscle Mag, Bob Kennedy's Muscle Mag in 1991 or 1992 with his wife, Judy. I have that cover somewhere, but you can Google it, Mike Scarcella, Muscle Mag, Mr. America. He was Mr. America. That's what got him on the cover. So then once he got that exposure, things started to happen. But at that time in the early 90s, you had to get big, you had to be jacked, and that's how you got attention, at least on a big scale. You could probably compete as a natural, but, let's be honest, you're not probably just spinning your wheels. And then, Sean Reyes and Lee Priest and Jay Cutler and Matt Mendenhall, Bob Paris, Roy Liedlmeyer, the list goes on and on. All of those guys were in the magazines. Well, I was just thinking about this, and I want to know what your thoughts are. So now you don't really need to be in the magazines, right? All you got to do is turn on your phone and your camera and start filming yourself. And if you've got potential, you can make it. So my suggestion to you younger guys and girls who love bodybuilding, fitness, physical culture is, do that. You don't have to be in the magazines. You just have to have potential. You got to be marketable. You got to have something to say. You got to have the right look or some type of look, that would be appealing to people. And you can help get bodybuilding back to where it was. I just showed you that bloated Sandow. Well, that's where we are right now. But you guys and girls, times have changed. We had to rely on the magazines to get exposure if we wanted to follow our dreams and be pro bodybuilders, pro fitness professionals, whatever. You don't have to do that anymore. So stop following those folks, the old guard, and start doing what I'm suggesting. Follow a natural lifestyle. There's a lot of really, big bodybuilders from the early days. Start researching them. Look at John Grimmick in the early days. Look at Steve Reeves. Look at George Eiferman and some of the other people I've mentioned in talking about Dominic Juliano's book. And that's more of an appealing look, and it's going to be more appealing for clothing lines, for supplements, for name, image, likeness types of things. It's a new frontier right now. You don't need the magazines anymore. I love the magazines and I still collect them. But if I was starting all over again, that's what I would do, is just, get in shape, have a plan as to what you're trying to accomplish. Do you want to get sponsors? Do you want to travel? Then, start getting in shape and start talking about that kind of stuff, build up a following, and who knows? You might be the next person that we need to turn all this stuff around and to start a new trend. We have Sam Sulik, but that's more of the same, right? I'm thinking about guys like Arnold Schwarzenegger, and he's 77 years old now. I love Arnold and all that, but I got to think he's got to be a little disappointed where bodybuilding has gone. So, at the end of your life, you look back on your life and you really want to be proud of what you accomplished. And, your Steve Reeves, your John Grimmicks, your Clancy Rosses, your George Eifermans. They lived a clean, healthy lifestyle. Jack LaLanne. So just food for thought. All right, guys, that's it. I will talk to you next time. Take care.